Welcome to the Strain Podcast, a Southgate Media Group production, where we talk all about Guillermo del Toro's horror fantasy series, The Strain. We are currently covering the series' third season on FX. I'm your host, Blaire and Graves, the executive producer and host of Professional Geek Podcast, and with me today is Kyle Tremblay, the editor-in-chief at TVBinges.com. You can find us on Twitter, at Blaire Loves TV and at Kyle Loves TV. And remember, both Kyle and Blaire have an E at the end. You can also follow this podcast's Twitter handle, at The Strain Pod, and don't forget to play hashtag The Strain Bingo with us every week for a chance to be on our show. Hi, Kyle. How you doing today?
Oh, Blaire, I'm so hyped up. I'm ready to jump into the Strigoi mosh pit. I'm ready to go.
It would be a very dangerous mosh pit.
It would. That's how it's like real heavy metal. I'm ready to do some heavy metal moves.
I hope everybody stays tuned. At the end of this episode, we have another bingo winner who we will bring on for 10 minutes. At Bat Mary, who was our winner, actually our first winner from last season, and we're very excited to bring her on again.
Yes.
But for now, today, Kyle, you and I will be discussing Season 3, Episode 5, titled Madness, which was written by Liz Fang, who is a writer, producer, and editor for HBO's Hung, and the writer for the following episodes of The Strain: The Assassin, which was the first episode where F and Dutch are a tag team duo, and the episode in which F shoots at Mrs. Palmer instead of hitting Coco Merchon, and Quick and Painless, the episode in which F becomes James Bond. So as far as I'm concerned, Liz Fang loves writing hilarious antics surrounding alcoholism.
And I love Liz Fang.
I do too. She writes great episodes.
This is my look. There are lots of versions of The Strain, and some might say that's a weakness. And some might be correct about that. But this is the version of The Strain that I'm into right here. This is action movie, wild stuff happening, all kinds of things going on. The show feels in motion. It's ready to go. It's not making a ton of sense, but it's moving too fast for you to care. This is my kind of Strain.
Yes, I really like Liz Fang's work because it does move fast and there's a lot of plot holes and everything. Yeah. But it's acceptable because it's so enjoyable. Like you can see past it. It's when the show drags, when other writers are at the helm and they get too caught up in the personal politics of everything. That's when the show gets really muddy. She just steamrolls past all that stuff and makes it this digestible, fun, wonderful action adventure.
I mean, we had a B story involving Fett in this episode in which he speaks one line for the majority of the episode. For like 40 minutes of this episode, Fett has one line, and it is spoken to himself staring into a window. And it involves hipsters. And for the rest of the time, Fett is like a silent action movie hero.
Just navigating the tunnels by himself.
Navigating tunnels, killing Strigoi in ingenious and comical ways. I mean, this is like... They went out of their way for Fett to not have, like, any context at all in this story. Fett is just doing work.
He's doing what exterminators do. He's just going around kicking ass.
He's exterminating.
He's like the Bruce Lee of exterminators.
Yeah, well, no, on Twitter I joked that he is now in his own Nick Cage movie. Like Fett is just full on Nick Cage, ready to go. Like he's delivering one-liners. He's throwing Strigoi into saws. Like he is now in The Rock. You know, he has entered his own television show, and he only came back to our show right at the very end.
Yes, it's been a good week for Fett.
Good week for Fett.
Including, which obviously is the last thing that happened, or among the last things in the episode, but finding like that giant pit of Strigoi, that's kind of terrifying. He did a lot of good work.
No, yeah, he had like a superhuman drive to find it too. I mean, he really went for it on a solo mish too. Like not even bringing backup.
Did you say solo mish?
I absolutely listen. We are moving in this episode. We don't have time for 2-syllable words. We are moving.
All right. Well, we should probably start at the beginning.
Yeah.
where the strain realized that its artsy montages with Abe's voice behind them is incredibly effective, and we jumped a week into the future.
which is, to put it in context, through 2 seasons and 26 episodes of The Strain, the show had advanced 20 days? Was
28,
it?
28 days.
28 days? Really?
So the season 3 opener said it's been 28 days.
I thought it was 21 days.
No, it's 28 days.
28 days? Okay.
Because everybody was making jokes about 28 days later. That's why I remember.
Okay. Well, anyway, so we had advanced 28 days in 26 episodes, and then in 5 minutes we advanced a quarter of that.
Yes, now it's been 35 days.
Just as a note, and I tweeted this, the show that I wanted The Strain to be is the show that was recapped in this montage. Like, all along, the version of The Strain that I wanted the show to be was basically, like, summarized for me in a 30-second montage. Like, oh, that's all. This week of what's happening in the world is the show for me. And it just went by in, like, 30 seconds.
Right, the military has abandoned people.
It was amazing. It was like everything we ever wanted from the show, and of course it was contained in, like, it was just, like, yada-yada'd over.
It's just the preamble before the credits rolled.
Exactly. No, they had to get to Dutch and Fett relationship talk. They couldn't give us one scene of, like, I don't know, Poland getting hit by Strigoi. Like, they couldn't give us one. Like, Australia, how are they dealing with it? You know, like, no, we gotta get that stuff out of the way, because, you know, Fett has a quest. F has a quest.
Yeah.
Everyone has quests. We got to get to them. Let's forget the world. We'll get rid of them in 30 seconds.
Which is weird, because one of our chief complaints about last season was that everybody was just going out on quests. But I think in this episode it actually worked. It worked in as much as they just dropped the ball and kept rolling. Like,
well, it worked the way that The Strain usually works when it works. It worked in very traditional ways for this show. And The Strain has worked at many times. It's not like this is some kind of breakthrough. I think the show has been like this for numerous episodes, if you go back to seasons 1 and 2. It's just, this is sort of the good version of The Strain, which is all the flaws still exist. It's just, they got the sort of alchemy right on the various quests. That Fett works best when he's either with Abe killing Strigoi or alone killing Strigoi. F needs something to do. Like, really something to do, preferably that makes him seem smart and not whiny. And so, instantly that means that F has to have a story where Zach isn't involved, which was the case here, thankfully. So many of his stories involve Zach, and that just instantly drags it down. So we have F actually being useful and being a scientist. We have Dutch as sort of the new Nora, I guess. Gonna start dyeing her hair brunette.
I know, I'm livid, but anyway.
Listen, don't try to make too much sense of it. So, you know, we have F being useful, and then we have Abe doing the sort of heavy lifting in terms of actually advancing the story. And so, yeah, that is the chemistry that works on this show. That is what the characters should be doing. It's just way too often, you know, Fett is involved in relationship drama, F is trying to get his son back, yada, yada, yada. You know, like, so often we just get way away from these stories. And so, I mean, quests aren't necessarily a bad thing. It's just when combined with sort of where the show's interests often lie, it becomes bad.
Right. It's more about the type of quests that really work for each character, as opposed to just, you know, taking your quest and coming back to the checkpoint, and going for a quest and coming back to the checkpoint. Like,
it's exactly what you said earlier, that when the show is working, that kind of structure kind of fades into the background. You don't really worry about that because you're having fun. But when the quests involve Zach, when the quests involve relationships, then you start noticing that structure and it becomes annoying. And so you know, I mean, it's kind of it's a truism, but it's like when The Strain is good, you sort of ignore the flaws. Those flaws still exist, you just ignore them. When the Strain is bad, you focus on the flaws, and that's just kind of how it goes.
Well, there's one flaw from this episode that we need to talk about right away, and then we can get to the rest of the episode.
Okay.
How did Abe get the oxidolumin back?
All right. Well, normally I'm the one to pose these questions, but I'm glad you tackled this one. Because, did I miss a scene?
Because didn't Kelly wrap it in like a burlap sack and run, like, or like jump into the water or something? Like, isn't that like I watched that episode twice? Kelly definitely got the exit lumen, right?
I was hoping that you had an answer. You usually have some kind of answer, because this dumbfounded me. I was just straight up under the impression that Kelly had the oxidolumen. What my only thought is that the oxidolumen that F stole was a fake. That Abe had this one in his safe all along, and F stole a fake.
Which has not been said.
Which would have been just an awesome thing to explain to the audience. Because we went through these last couple episodes thinking that Abe is a big old dummy for having that book out in the open as, like, easy to steal. All it took is one human walking by and his $300 million book is stolen. Like, it would have been so easy for anyone to take it, and of course F did, but it's like, oh, well, if he, and he apparently had, well, he had the original, but he also had photocopies. Like, when did he do all this, and why wasn't it on screen? And why are we not even addressing it? Why are we treating it as information the audience already knows? When, as far as I can tell, this is the first time this information has been introduced.
So our longtime fan from back when we did the Grimm podcast, Monroe's Comfy Sweater, Sandrita, which is at the Mystical on Twitter. One of the greats. She's one of the best people on Twitter ever. You should follow her. Mystical is Mysticaal. The Mystical. When I tweeted this, she said, no, she ran away when the master got his head cut off and dropped the book. She's a bad minion.
She dropped the book?
Like, the thing that, like, was the most important thing, right, for the master? Isn't that, like...
Well, I assume she thought the master was dead.
Right, so she's like, oh, I'm out.
I'm done. I'm just straight up done. The book doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
Like, but, like, okay, let's assume that we both missed that. Well, let's assume that she dropped the book. It's like, we could have used the scene of Abe picking up the book. like, this book, we devoted a freaking season to it, okay? I need to keep track of the book. I need the Strain to do a little better job of helping me keep track of the stupid book.
We need, like, a timeline in the up front of every episode.
Yeah, I need book cam. I need the book's first-person perspective on what's happening.
Oh, that's such a great idea.
Someone explained to me where the Tuxedo Ramen is and who has custody of it at any given moment.
Yeah. There should just be a Twitter handle that says, Abe's got me.
Yeah. A Twitter name like, where is the Tuxedo Ramen?
Right, where is the Tuxedo
Abe's
Ramen?
safe. Kelly's hands. The ground.
Oh, I might have to make this now. But yes, I missed it. You missed it. A bunch of other people on Twitter missed it. Thankfully, Sandrita didn't miss it.
Yes.
So we're very thankful for that. But yes, I really was like, all right, I'm just going to go with this. But I don't remember anybody getting this book.
Yeah, no, I was
thought
lost.
Kelly had it. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah.
We've gotten past the big part. So we also really need to talk about F and Dutch in this episode because for a long time, and I'm not totally sold that this isn't the case, but for a long time, I mean this season so far, I've been under the impression that they're starting to sort of ship those two, Dutch and F. But I think in this episode, they more had like a buddy cop thing going on where they kind of made it clear that they're not seeking to like get carnal, that they are just friends who like both enjoy different sides of science, and they're alcoholics and they both enjoy alcohol, and they're just going to go on these kind of wacky adventures. Did you get that impression? Or are you like just bracing yourself for the moment that they end up being together?
Well, I mean, it's like I said, I feel like she's filling the Nora role now, but then F was sleeping with Nora. So it's like the buddy cop role does not preclude that kind of shenanigans. So I am not sure. I thought there was a point where F apropos of nothing, asked Dutch about her relationship status with Fett. And I feel like that was one of the moments that, like, the showrunner was like, this has to be in here because we're going to set something up 5 episodes. Like, you know, there's like, it was so out of place and so, like, it was like the scene where they were microwaving the Strigoi. It's like, yeah, this line has no business in this scene. Obviously, it's to set something up.
Right.
So F could have been scouting for romantic possibilities with Dutch, or he could. Well, no, there's really no other option. He definitely was scouting for romantic possibilities with Dutch. um, yeah, so I think, I mean, worst case scenario, we have a Dutch F Fett love triangle. Worst case scenario, where Fett decides he wants her back, or doesn't but gets jealous of F if she and F get together, but maybe she's just using F to make Fett jealous. Like, couldn't you see it? Like, couldn't you see that happening?
Yeah.
On the show? Yeah. Right. I think best case scenario is that F makes a pass at her and she shuts him down. That's probably where I want this to head.
That's where I would like it to
to me, that would be the ideal resolution to this whole business.
Yeah. Although it's interesting because in my mind, at least a little bit, Fett and Feraldo and then F and Dutch, I feel like are about to all be on opposite sides of one another. Like maybe Fett's going to be caught in the middle, but like Feraldo with her whole cleaning up the streets thing has gone full supervillain as far as I'm concerned. And I don't see Fett joining her in the idea that people can be in chain gangs and things like that. Like obviously he's not privy to that information yet. So like if Fett does stay on Feraldo's side, then I can see a world where it's more like Dutch fleeing into F's arms because she's like, I can't believe he's being such a monster or something like that. But I don't know. I'm starting to get really confused about these alliances because obviously Fett and F aren't getting along for other reasons as well. And like, I'm just waiting for the ball to drop and for somebody to be like, yo, Feraldo, what's good?
I don't want to get into this because I don't want to get into this too deep because we spent half the episode out last week. But I don't know if Feraldo is a supervillain at this point. In fact, that's not my interpretation of where she is right now. It is definitely my current guess at where she is going to end up. But I don't think that is the case at the moment. But I think it's probably moot by the end of the season because it will be the case.
Yes.
So, but in any case, yeah, I mean they're definitely like they're still laying the groundwork for that. Like with Feraldo's biggest sin in this episode, unless I really missed something again in this episode, was that she was just grumpy. she was a grumpy Gus. We didn't get Gus, so Feraldo was a grumpy Gus. I didn't see like she didn't commit any atrocities.
No, just
she was just grumpy.
Kind of yelled at some folks and got mad. I know. She was just
being grumpy.
Just showing up and getting mad.
Right.
I would like to say that I got the Strain podcast handle accidentally blocked by the Strain's official handle for a second.
No,
they unblocked me, but it was like to stop me from letting a tweet go through that was connected to one of theirs, where they were saying that Feraldo was laying down the law, and I said, actually, she's being an evil, corrupt, rights-ignoring dictator, but okay, we can pretend that what she's doing is lawful.
I feel like your anti-Feraldo stance so early needs to be kept in check.
I know.
I feel like you're becoming an anti-Feraldo dictator.
I am. I'm trying to be the moral police.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think, I mean, it's like clearly again it's where we're headed with her.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for that direction. I'm excited for the day in which she becomes what you currently think she comes. But the day has not arrived yet. Like she is still her greatest sin so far is not shutting down the prison program that again Kowalski initiated. She didn't shut it down, and that is bad, but also the world is ending. So it's like on the scale of bad things on the Strain, like to me what Gus did, murdering for all those people, is 1,000 times worse than anything Feraldo has done on the show to date. Like okay. I don't think there is a single action that Feraldo has done that compares at all to Gus flat out murdering 2 people intentionally well-intentioned people intentionally with absolutely no reason other than he's trying to protect his Strigoi mother. Like that, if you're going to start calling villains, to me, that's villainous. For all he's done so far is not comparable to that.
All right, you're right. You're right. You talked me off the ledge
But at the same
a little
time,
bit.
but no, and we got a great piece of feedback from someone whose name I forget because I read the email and I replied to the email, sort of making this point, and my response was like, I just think you're so deep into genre television that you know what's coming. You see all that you've read the tea leaves and you know what's coming, and it's I think maybe a little bit hard to separate the ramp up from the execution when you so clearly see the ramp up.
Yes.
Yeah.
The person with her name is Juliet. I won't say
Perfect.
her last name,
Juliet.
but her name is Juliet, and she actually replied to us, so we will read that later.
Yeah.
Thank you, Juliet, for your fan mail. We encourage everybody to send us fan mail at thestrainpodcast@gmail.com. Anyway,
Yeah.
we really appreciate it. We love talking with you guys via email and being able to hash out all the concerns and issues that you guys are having too.
Yeah.
So I need to go back to Dutch again for a second.
Yes.
When did she become a a ham radio builder of things? Because
we have retcon Dutch.
Yeah, she was a hacker, which is a coder, which is not the same thing as a builder.
Yeah, she was she was the world's greatest hacker. And she did rig up that TV signal that F put out. Remember?
Oh, that's true. Mm-hmm.
So we can presume she has electronics skill. I think we are sort of working our way towards mechanical skill in general. like Dutch absolutely could have set up those saws that fed through a Strigoi too. He's becoming a construction worker, I think, this season.
Right.
Because she was wearing when she was with her little crew, she was wearing ratty clothes. She is really going from this mysterious sort of Morpheus type hacker figure to a construction ham radio operator. which is it's kind of a funny character direction, but I guess they can't find uses for a hacker currently, so they need to give her some use.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I just needed to get that out of the way because I was confused.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, as we've said, they don't know what to do with Dutch or Gus at this point in the show. So with Dutch, they're just rewriting the character, basically, the backstory. They're sort of adapting her to fit the situation, and they've found they can pair her with F and at least make her feel useful. And I think this was probably her most successful outing this season to date, in terms of, just feeling like an integral part of the cast as opposed to, a tacked-on addition to the episode.
Yes.
And then with Gus, they just cut him from this episode, which is probably for the best.
Gus and Zach.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that might be honestly we're gonna break down this show for a half hour, but you could just sum up why this episode was successful by saying that Zach wasn't involved.
Yeah.
And again, I do not approve of the internet Zach hate, especially any directed towards the actor, but that's where we're at with the show. It's a character problem, not an actor problem. It's just when that character appears on screen, bad things happen.
Yeah, it's just the actor's given really bad material.
Very bad
I agree.
Material.
I do not advocate tweeting at young children about how annoying they are, because that's terrible.
It's sad that we have to give that disclaimer that our hate is towards the character, but that's the world we live in.
Yep. Welcome to Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Abe and Quinlan, because they had a snark off in this episode, and it was fantastic.
Yes.
Those two together are just the absolute best. I don't know if it's because they're the two British cast members or what it is, but it is. They just have phenomenal chemistry, even though they're just sitting around and looking at photocopied pages for 90% of the time that iteration of Abe is on screen. It was still fantastic.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, their whole business this episode arose from Abe being upset at Quinlan for taking the tuxedo ramen, and so he assigned him homework. And then so Quinlan delivered a couple book reports in an oral presentation. And that's what they were doing for most of this episode. But yeah. I guess we've talked a lot in the past about the flashbacks on this show, and I thought this was about the best the show has done with flashbacks. Right.
Positively.
This and I think the big reason is that this was one of, for my money, the best scenes of the first two books of the Strain.
Yes.
The Abe's interaction with Dreverhaven, the
Hmm.
the evil Nazi Strigoi doctor, who Abe sort of loses his mind and spends an entire week. I don't know if that was clear on the show, but he spends an entire week locked up in this guy's kill room, basically like dissecting him and removing his limbs as we saw, and then packing them in a suitcase and throwing them in the ocean. Like, this is savagery by Abe, and it's like it's especially in the books, it's so striking because the character is so much more dignified in the books than he is on the show. He's like a
Hmm.
professor, which is literally his backstory, but on the show you can't imagine him as a professor. In the books you imagine him as this very soft-spoken professor guy, and seeing that happen and reading that scene is like, wow, like this
Yeah.
guy is not joking around. And honestly, it's a scene that should have occurred much earlier, because I think it tells us so much about who Abe is and
Hmm.
this side of him. You know, we've seen him decapitate so many Strigoi at this point. It's like, well, this is sort of where that started. You know, this is that moment where he becomes like a heartless killing machine, even behind this veneer of being a professor. Um, and that, I mean, it was really like good, and they I mean, I know why they saved it, because they wanted to tie it in with the reveal of the actual way to stop the master, and it ties in really nicely with that. And so, I mean, maybe it was unavoidable, but yeah, I just thought it worked really well, and it was a great use of flashbacks to reinforce the main story of the episode.
So we've talked about before, not every single great thing that the Strain TV show does is from the books, because obviously
Yeah.
Creatures of the Night was its own isolated, beautiful, amazing, perfect thing.
Yes.
But there, the thing when the show is like most effective, I feel like when it decides to have these like really long drawn out set pieces,
Mm-hmm.
are when they're direct lifts from the book. Like
Yeah.
when we first met Angel, that was that was a direct lift from the books, and it was executed perfectly. And this, although it didn't necessarily showcase, as you say, like the fact that it takes a week for him to take Dreverhaven apart, it's still like this sort of beautiful. It's like one of the first times, and probably the only time I've really felt that young Abe was really effective,
Yeah.
um, because it's just this direct lift of this really amazing, beautiful imagery, even though it's savage imagery, as you're saying, and it's disgusting, and it's kind of made me have a lump in my throat for a second.
Yeah.
It's still it's still this lift of like some of the most excellent material that the book has in itself, not just because it's in the books, but because there are isolated pieces in the books that are amazing, and that's one of them. And it always reminds me, like, I'll go for a while at the Strain being like, all right, I accept that, this is different, and then they lift something out and place it into the show, and I go, why'd you have to change it so much? Like, I don't advocate like a direct translation ever, but like all these little weird things that they're doing makes these characters so it convolutes everything, and it makes it feel strange to me, as opposed to this, which just feels like this is the show I came for, and this is the story that I came for, which is not to say that I need it to be exactly the same, but it's a reminder of how good the books were, as opposed to how good the show is not
Yeah,
usually.
well, I think the show's job in a lot of cases is to interpret the books in a way that translates to the show, and I think an example of that would be the montages that we're getting at the start of these episodes, twice now this season, where the books gave us a much clearer view of the world, of just through a variety of means. It's still very New York centric, and still very much centered on these characters, but I never felt in the books as if I was just like had blinders on. I never, and maybe it was just through suggestion. I don't think the books ever do anything as direct as what this episode does in terms of like updating you on the status of the world, but you just never feel like it's a missing piece the way you do on the show. And so the show sort of gives us this to catch up like that. And I think it's preserving the spirit of the books that I think is important. That
Mhm.
as we've talked about in our sort of year-end wrap-up episodes where I actually read the books, um, the books are so dialogue light, and television is always going to be dialogue heavy, and so a lot of the scenes have to be reworked just due to the sort of narrative nature of the books versus the dialogue nature of television. And so I think, you know, and that's maybe why the show struggles to come up with content to fill seasons, is that a lot of the sort of scene setting work that takes pages and pages of written word is done with a 2-second establishing shot on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is one of the chief problems the show has. I'm never someone in any piece of art who says, like, you know, the TV has to resemble the books or it's bad. And I know that's not what you're saying. But I do agree that the show does, I mean, the books are good. And the show, so I think, like, the show can benefit from lifting the most memorable moments and maybe building out from there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
building out worlds around these moments from the books, if they can't actually follow them to the T.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Another thing that they preserve from the books, which I'm really excited about, as you were mentioning earlier, is that sunlight is the key to reading the Oxidolumen. That it is best read in the sunlight because it'll give you all the information that you need, because all the other stuff is just sort of like a history of vampires, blah, blah, blah. But the actual destruction of the vampires, the actual way to work around them, the actual way to harm them, to capture the master, how to deal with the ancients, all that information can only be seen by somebody who can go out in the sun, which means somebody who is not a vampire. And I think that is when I first read it in the books, I thought it was exceptionally clever, but seeing it in the TV show, it was also revealed in a very clever way. And I am so excited that this damn book that we've walked around for 2 seasons for, or like a season and a half for, like, is finally being useful, because like it is astonishing to me that it took them 18 episodes to make this book actually useful.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's a long reveal.
Yeah, it's been a while on the Tuxedo Ramen. I mean, it was a real ramp up. You know, you look back and, like, all the auction stuff, and it's like, oh boy, and then F takes it, but apparently it's a fake. Like, it's been a journey with the book, so it's nice to actually see it. I agree with you. It's nice to actually see it be put to use. And for stuff to happen with it. I mean, yeah, I thought I felt very satisfied by Abe sort of cracking the code, and he would be the character to crack that code. And it was nice with Quinlan there, sort of along for the ride, having been chastised that he acted very hastily, even though he's been waiting for thousands of years for this. He acted hastily, jumped the gun, and kind of blew his chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I like... Although I'm still wondering, like, okay, so what's revealed is that the way just to stop the master is to trap him, right?
Yes, to trap him in his coffin, which is encased with lead and silver.
So stepping on the worm wouldn't work?
Well, probably that would work.
Right?
But...
Like, if you have the master in a situation where you are able to trap him, couldn't you just, like, UV light fry the worm, be done with this? Like, is the worm unkillable?
So I think this has gone unsaid, but, like, there needs to be, like, a senior parasite, right? Like, there needs to be the parasite that all the other ones came from.
Okay.
My interpretation, which does not come from me having extra knowledge from having read the 3rd book, this is just my interpretation, would be that what you need to do is to block him from putting out the signal to all of the vampires he's already made, because I imagine that there's another way that one of them could sort of, like, step up in the ranks or something like that.
Okay.
Like right, like you need the same way that you just drop instead of killing a vampire outright, you drop it in the water where it lives forever. You need to sort of trap it forever so that it can't spread its signal, and so that they're easy to kill and they can't think independently so much. They're sort of like docile.
But I like that, and that explains things, but I thought that was sort of like the master being an ancient, almost. Like I guess I don't like the ancients, okay? The master is sort of the rogue one, but he's one of them. There's 7 of them, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My interpretation is that if any of them wanted to, they could do the same thing the Master is doing.
Yes.
And that ability is unique to them. That the reason they are all powerful is they have this ability to psychically communicate. And like when we saw Icarus dealing with trying to sort of herd the Strigoi into his plot last episode, he just had to sort of physically do it. He had no ability to psychically communicate with them. I thought that was very much an ancient thing.
I genuinely also believe that, but I also think that if you're blocking the signal, then they're just more docile. Like, that's just my interpretation. Like, they just don't, they don't act out. They can't think for themselves very well.
But it seemed like when the microwave machine that F and Dutch developed was working for a brief period in this episode, they became more feral when you blocked the signal. I mean, that machine was specifically blocking the signal, and the Strigoi stopped being clever and just started attacking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I don't know. Like I mean, I assume that if you trapped the Master in this case, they would just all go feral and they would be easy to kill because they would no longer have any strategic aims. They would just sort of be like rabid dogs, and you would eventually be able to put them down.
But well, then why wouldn't you just kill him? I guess is the question, right?
Well, that's why I'm thinking he is somehow unkillable. Like the worm is in some way unkillable, and I don't know how that would be. But but I'm just like, it seemed like we saw the Crimson Worm. It looked just like a big worm. What happens if you step on it? That's the question that I basically need answered. Because this all seems like this whole thing that they had to spend $300 million to get the book and crack the code and read the Sun pages and all that. Like, that's great and all. What happens if you step on the worm? Just give me that. What's the answer?
Yeah, I don't know. They should probably try to answer that.
Seems like a question that I could use answered.
Yeah, but I think generally the point is to make them go more feral. I don't. That's the thing, is I wonder if you kill him, do they, like, they might lose their strategy of talking to each other, but do they lose their intelligence? And maybe it's if they're unconnected, they completely lose their intelligence. I don't know.
I assume that would do the same. It would stop the signal. But what I think, what you brought up earlier, maybe, is that if you kill him, the signal is no longer being projected in any way. Like if you trap them underground, the signal exists. That's just not reaching them. Maybe if the signal goes away entirely, there's some kind of some sort of fail-safe they have or something. You know, like maybe a new hero will rise because they need to get the signals from someone. But if something along, but that's just pure, hypothesis based on nothing. Like, the show would probably do well to explain why, if that worm was microwaved, it wouldn't just stop everything. We wouldn't have to worry about lead coffins. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the real answer. It's all hypothesis. It's all speculation.
Worry. I'm sure it will be addressed in a cryptic way 4 episodes from now, as is the strange tradition.
All right, before we wrap up, I guess the one other thing that we need to talk about, because Twitter seemed alive with it, was this guy that Icarus brought with him to meet Palmer.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the kind of handsome, I don't know his name. I don't feel like they made him interesting at all.
Handsome evil beard boy.
Yeah, exactly.
He is a handsome evil beard boy.
Yeah. Is he the Master? Is he just some guy with a bunch of money? I don't know.
Oh, he really seems like the Master, right? Like, that is, the show doesn't introduce a lot of new characters. That really seems like.
Well, if they think Eldritch isn't working, which I think everybody can agree is not working, then he's just like a new dude with money, and they can just, do off with Eldritch as they'd like. That's sort of what I think it is. I think it's just like a dude with money, like, hey, we don't need your money anymore. We got this guy. But I don't know. I feel like all the dialogue was super vague.
Isn't the timing really coincidental? That at the end of this episode, it ended with Abe and Palmer actually forging a bit of an alliance. against Abe's better judgment in what I'm sure will never backfire on him, to suss out who the master is, because yeah, we got confirmation that they know he's taken a body because the Strigoi are back under his control. The fact that we've got this mysterious evil bearded boy showing up, who has very little backstory and just seems to be hanging around, would seem to fit, although it would be a terribly disappointing body for the master to have taken.
Well, that's sort of the thing, is like the master's like, I need a big strong body, and like that guy was like maybe 5'9" or something, you know, like he wasn't.
He was a little beard boy.
Yeah, he didn't have like a big presence. He didn't tower over anybody. He wasn't like super broad shouldered. Like he was clean cut. Like I just wonder. That's why I think he's just like another financier, and so we can kind of like. Which, by the way, Palmer like making, or not Palmer, Eldritch. Palmer making himself fall to try to gain sympathy from them. Like, I think the show wanted us to believe that he actually fell.
I don't know what the show wanted us to believe.
But my only read of the situation was that he was like, "Oh, poor me.
He was doing pratfalls.
You must give me the white fall." Like
a fragile constitution can't take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, that's sort of where I was at. I'm sorry if I offended anybody.
No, that's exactly it.
That's my only read of the situation, is that he was like trying to get sympathy from a place that there can't be any.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That was a funny scene. But yeah, people were making a deal of this new guy, so I just wanted to make sure that I brought him up so that people knew we brought him up.
We would be remiss not to specifically single out in that scene Icarus yelling for the nurse. In just the most dismissively disgusted way possible. Nurse!
Yeah, it was pretty great. That was really the sass moment of the bingo square.
Yeah, that fully qualified for Icarus sass.
All right, speaking of the bingo, we are going to now talk to Bat Mary, who is our second winner of the season and the first person to get more than one bingo to be on our show. So enjoy.
We are thrilled to welcome back our first ever returning guest on the Strain podcast. She has once again conquered Strain Bingo. Bat Mary, congratulations and welcome back.
Yay, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
You were a winner for last year, right? For the Strain Bingo when we first started doing the card.
Yeah.
Our first ever winner.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Woohoo.
Woo! And now you have returned to us for season 3, episode 5, Madness, which is a great title for this episode. Okay, so we've changed it up a little bit, and we have 4 questions that we're gonna ask you, and we'll talk it through with you. All right.
All right.
First one. As of season 3, episode 5, who is your favorite character right now?
Oh boy. It's becoming Fett. I think it's Fett. Yeah. I think you mentioned it in Twitter tonight. You were talking about he was acting like Nicolas Cage, and I was like, you know what? I do love him. It's wonderful.
Fett is like Nicolas Cage and Jack Bauer had a child right now. Fett is in full-on action hero solo adventure mode, and I couldn't love it anymore. So I'm very excited for Fett. He might be becoming my favorite character as well.
Oh yeah.
So to date on the show, all seasons included, what is your favorite episode or moment of the Strain?
Oh boy. Favorite episode or moment? Well, I'm going back through and I'm watching season 1 because I didn't watch it last time.
Right.
And I'm realizing there's a lot of worms in season 1, which is really gross. Oh. So I think I like any moment that doesn't have worms in it.
So this episode must have been a real slog for you.
Oh, I was not happy.
You got worms in season 1. You got worms in this episode. Just worms, top to bottom. Worms everywhere.
Oh yeah.
That's right. Gross. I had forgotten that the first time we brought you on, you had sort of just hopped on the train mid-season.
Oh yeah.
And you're going through and you're rewatching. That's got to be such an interesting experience.
It is, because sometimes I'm forgetting what's happening, but I just have to remember whether or not F has hair. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's season 1.
It really is like the mile marker for the show. Like F's hair situation immediately places you in time.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so then what is wait, before preamble to this question, are you fully caught up? Have you seen every episode, or are you still going through your rewatch of the first season or first watch?
Yeah, I'm still catching up in season 1. I'm not there yet.
Okay, so then with the caveat that you have a couple of pieces missing, what is your overall opinion of The Strain as of season 3, episode 5?
I really like season 3 so far, and I feel like I've watched enough of it that it's making sense now. I don't think that Quinlan is the master, and and that Eldridge and someone else are the same person. I've sorted out the characters, but yeah, I think overall it's coming together.
You are making tremendous progress in terms of knowing which character is which. This is great.
Yes, yes.
We should bring you on like every 6 or so episodes for a recurring like quiz where we describe a character and you give us the character name.
Oh, I wouldn't be able to give you the character name. I could probably describe a character and ask y'all whose their name is.
Oh, perfect. That's great. I feel like it's oddly fitting that our grand champion of Strain Bingo has a tenuous at best grasp on who the characters are.
Listen, names are hard.
No, I'm 100% in agreement with you. I forget character names constantly.
Yeah.
So our final question, and we don't mean to put you on the spot.
Okay.
But if you could add one bingo square to our card, do you have any ideas for what that square might be? And we can workshop it if you don't have a great idea ready to go.
Oh, I feel like I had one earlier. I was thinking of it. I always think we need like a facepalm moment, but I feel like that's most of F's.
I was gonna say that's like a free square.
Yeah. Of course, y'all had worms last time, so I can't say like worms again. No. Although apparently we're gonna have to add worms again because they're back.
Maybe like a whole bunch of worms.
Right, excessive worms.
Like a comically large amount of worms would be a good one. Yeah.
Like every time a Strigoi explodes, there's an excessive amount of worms. So I think that would work.
Right. Maybe on the bingo card, the square would just be in all caps, worms everywhere with 5 exclamation points.
Yeah.
There we go. We workshopped it out. That is a good square that we could add.
Yeah. I like that one. We totally failed to say right when we brought you on which bingo you got. So we're going to do that now.
Oh, yeah.
So you were the only one to get a full bingo. You almost got a second bingo, which we'll discuss in a second. But your bingo was Abraham's Got a Plan, which was him going and finding out that the Tuxedo Ramen has sunlight capabilities. Feraldo cleans up the city, which, as she do right now.
Feraldo was cleaning up the city the whole episode, yeah.
She was. Yeah. That's all she was doing.
That's all she ever does.
You got the Strigoi free zone, otherwise the free square. You got F has a near 100% chance to succeed at something and yet somehow screws it up.
This is our facepalm.
Yeah. My favorite one that has happened to date of him like going, oh, look how dumb he is, and like taking pictures while the Strigoi figures out how to use a key.
This was F turning a completely controlled situation into almost disaster.
Using the key within grasp of the Strigoi.
I was just like, seriously? Like, how are you a scientist at this point?
Yeah, it was a disaster.
And your final square was Strigoi death via improvised weapon, and that was Fett chucking a Strigoi onto a bunch of saws, which I don't even know why they were there.
Listen.
Were they digging equipment? Was that what it was? Is that how they're tunneling? I don't know what that was.
When you're Nicolas Cage, you don't ask where the saws came from, okay? The saws are there, and they are there for you.
Oh, okay. That's true.
So, the one that you almost got was the character death one, right?
Yeah, I almost got, I think, the one down at the bottom straight across.
We don't need to go through all the scores of that one, but suffice to say that it hinged on a character death, and the rule for that one is it has to be a named character, and so Dreverhaven, this Strigoi who was introduced in the flashback, would have been an ideal character, but Abe did everything possible except kill him. Abe technically left him alive on the bottom of the ocean for all of time. So not a
I
character
think
death.
that should count as death. That's close enough.
I mean,
Yeah. There's actually several almost bingos on here. I was looking at him. I was like, come on, man.
I felt like at that point Abe was just torturing you. Like he did that specifically to spite your bingo card.
Yeah.
But eventually you persevered.
Oh yeah. I'm very competitive when it comes to bingo.
Well, listen, you're not. This is the standard that other bingo players need to aspire to. You know.
Oh yeah.
They're out here. You know, all these big Strain fans are out here, you know, casually checking the bingo card. But you know, you've got a good. You don't know what the characters are, but you've got the bingo card good to go.
Yeah. I just keep retweeting it every few minutes so I can check it.
This is our social media strategy for the Strain podcast. This is how we operate.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, Batberry, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything, like, how people can follow you on Twitter and stuff while you would live tweet the Strain and other things?
At Batmary. I tweet on Twitter when I can. And, yeah, that's kind of about the only place you can follow me. It's hard for me to watch The Strain now because I have to wake up at like 5 a.m. on Mondays.
Oh, gosh.
So, yeah.
Oh, well, you're such a trooper for hopping on with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
This wraps up our 34th episode of the Strain podcast. Before we go, I want to mention a few things. You can download and subscribe to our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. You can also hear all of our podcasts at our website, southgatemediagroup.com. Please subscribe to the show and also rate us. Follow the show on Twitter @TheStrainPod, and Kyle and I @KyleLovesTV and @BlaireLovesTV. Remember, both Kyle and Blaire have an E at the end. You can also find us on Facebook, so go follow us there. Send us fan mail at thestrainpodcast@gmail.com. Again, super thanks to Juliet for sending us fan mail this week. And don't forget to play #TheStrainBingo with us every week for a chance to be on the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.